Hi, Mrs. Lowry. I am JC Bundy, and I am here to talk about your son, Crosby. Crosby is a great student. He is hardworking. He is excited about school. He's always willing to help. He follows all of the classroom rules. He gets along with all the kids, and he really is a joy to have in this class. So I started off, there's a couple different assessments that I did, so I'm kind of just going to go through them and talk about the things he needs to work on, the things that he has done awesome, and then we can go from there. So the first thing I did was the Burke Reading Inventory, and this is just kind of to see his understanding of why we read, what kind of reader he thinks he is, and his skills. Some of the questions include, when you're reading and you come to something you don't know, what do you do? And he said he looks at the pictures, which is a great skill that everyone should have, and he has already mastered that, which I think is awesome. I asked him questions like, what does he think makes someone a good reader? He said some answers like people who know how to read the words. I asked him for examples of people he thought were good readers, and he said his mom. And so that's awesome because that means he is getting exposure to reading at home. I asked him things like, where does he read outside of school? And he said yes, he gets read to at night before he goes to bed, which is great, and that sets up really awesome habits for him. I did notice when I asked if he thought he was a good reader, he said no because he doesn't know very many words. And I have noticed throughout class that he kind of lacks confidence a little bit. He's a great reader for where he's at in kindergarten, and so to build his confidence, I think the best way to do that is to just expose him to opportunities to read as much as possible, both in the classroom and at home. So if you could have him read to you and you read to him, I think that'll really help build his confidence and he'll become more comfortable with reading. The next thing I did was the print concepts inventory, and this is basically just to make sure that kids know when they look at the book, where's the front of the book, where's the back of the book, do they read left from right, can they tell a letter from a word, can they tell a capital letter from a lowercase letter, punctuation, things like that. It's out of 16, and Crosby got a 13 out of 16. He only missed 3, and those were in punctuation. He didn't know what the question mark was for, what a comma was for, and what quotation marks were for, which at this point in the school year we haven't taught or gone over, so that's totally understandable. I think he'll pick up on it right away as soon as we go over it in class. He knew what the period was because that's what we've covered in class. So I'm not too worried about anything in that category. The next thing I did was a running record, and since he is in kindergarten and it's the beginning of the school year, he hasn't had a running record taken on him. So I started at below grade level. The first book I read was called Visiting Grandma and Grandpa. His accuracy rate, he knew 18 out of the 20 words. He only didn't know 2, and I just helped him with them. They were words like the actual word was bake. He said cook, or the actual word was love. He said like. So he is looking at the pictures and kind of comprehending what he's reading to try to figure out what the word is, but he's not looking at the actual sounds that the words are making. And I noticed that through all 3 of them. The second one I also did below grade level. He got a 14 out of 15. Same thing, the word was snack. He said apple. The picture in the books had an apple. And then the third one, I moved him up to grade level because I thought below grade level was too low for him. And he got a 39 out of 47, and he had the same consistent mistakes. So I think to help him with that, I want to work on sound spelling a lot more. We do this thing called labeling, where we'll have a picture and they have to label it, and I think that will really help him with doing the sounds of the words, because I think that's he needs to be able to look at the sounds instead of just looking at the picture. So when you're reading with him at home and he's reading to you, if you notice that he's doing that, correct him on what the actual word is and point out. We can look at the first initial sound of the word to help us figure out what the word is. The next one I did was the PSI, and that was the spelling one, and this is to just basically check their spelling, their understanding of the initial and final sounds, digraphs, blends, things like that. We keep going even if they don't spell the words correctly because we want them to try to be able to figure it out. It's not common for in kindergarten only to do like the first 5 words. So that's what we did. We actually did the first 7 words. He spelled 1 correctly out of those 7. But we score it based off if they can get the initial letter right, the ending, the final letter, any vowels in between, things like that. So he got 7 out of the 7 initial sounds, and he got 6 out of 7 of the final sounds, and then 1 out of 7 of the short vowel sounds, and then 1 out of the 7 of the blends. And so that kind of puts him at about an early letter name alphabetic level for spelling, which is totally right where he should be for the school year. The next one we did was retelling, and so I did this 3 separate times. I read 3 different stories. All were his first time reading them, and I just read the story, and then at the end I asked him things like what happened at the beginning, what happened at the end, things like that. He knew them all. He answered the questions with no problem. He could retell, give supporting details, so his comprehension skills are awesome. To keep up those comprehension skills as he moves into harder texts, I would suggest, and we will continue to do this in class too, but at home, as you're reading to him or he's reading to you, ask him comprehension questions like what just happened, what happened at the beginning, why did this character do that. That'll help him to deepen his understanding of what he's reading and really strengthen those comprehension skills that he already is starting to gain. The last one I did was the writing sample scale for emergent writers. So I took 2 different independent writing samples. They were things that he wrote on his own with no help. And we're checking for things like for things in 3 different categories and then taking the average. The first is language level, so that's about are they putting letters, are they putting words, are they grouping the words into word phrases, are they forming actual sentences, do they have a punctuated sentence, and do they have a paragraph with like 2 themes. The average score for Crosby for that was a 4, which is sentences, so that means he's forming simple sentences, which is exactly where we want him to be. The second category was message quality. The 6 categories are concept of signs using letters, punctuation. Then there's concept that a message is conveyed. Then there's message is copied, repetitive use of sentence patterns, attempts to record own ideas, and produce a successful composition. He scored a 3.5, which puts him at about the message is copied and repetitive use of sentence patterns. I noticed a lot in his writing we talk a lot about the word I. So he starts a lot of his sentences with I, and he sometimes gets into the rut of thinking all of his sentences need to start in I, which is extremely common. And so in class, we're just going to have to work on emphasizing that all sentences don't have to start with I. They can start with any word you want them to. The last category in his writing samples is directional principles. This is just about their sentence structure. Out of 6, he scored a 5 out of 6, which is correctional directional pattern and spaces in between words. That means he's starting from the left, going to the right, and has spaces between his words consistently. He's a great writer. He's doing sound spelling great, which is what we've been practicing a lot, and he's even using periods at the end of his sentences, which is awesome. Overall, Crosby is a great kid and has great levels of understanding and literacy. I am not too concerned about anything that he's doing. I want him to really work on his sound spelling when he's reading, being able to look at the sounds and the letters and trying to figure out the words. So that's his fallback instead of looking straight at the pictures. Use the pictures if you can't figure out the sounds. So hopefully we'll get to working on those things, but overall he's doing awesome, and I'm so happy that I got to work with him.